Alright everyone, we are back with our historic content list. And this week, we had a monster upset in boxing. Caleb Plant lost to Jose Armando Resendez. Caleb Plant was a minus 2,500 favorite heading into that bout. So it made us think, what list should we do? Well, the greatest upsets in boxing history. So we'll jump right into it. Top 10, your greatest upsets in boxing history.
Yeah, the criterion, look, it's pretty simple. It's got to be an underdog that, does part of what we love in sports, what we love in life is when an underdog surprises the world. And, there's nothing bigger than an underdog surprising the world in boxing, It makes me think about that James Cagney movie, Top of the World, Ma, Top of the World. I'm trying to remember the name of that movie, but when you win a heavyweight title or any title in boxing, well, you're on top of the world. And we're gonna go into these upsets. And again, the criterion is obviously what I just said, doing the unexpected, a guy who's a big dog pulling it off, but also historic, where it places as far as historic relevance and importance, what the fight was for, what the fight was, the importance around the fight, historically, and as far as the title that exchanged hands or might have exchanged hands, all of that. And most of these are all title fights, because of that being part of the criterion, that it had to not only be an upset, but an upset in an important fight, in a very important fight, and in a fight where a lot of people were obviously involved in watching the fight and caring about the results of it. So those are all, for people saying, how did I come up with the list? Those are all part of what I'm looking at. So number 10, I'll start with a recent one. Sarachi knocks out Munguia in their first fight. That was pretty big, but I don't know if you remember exactly what the line was, but that Sarachi was a huge dog, and nobody really gave him a chance.
Yeah, Bruno Saras versus Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia was like minus 2,000 or more heading into that fight.
So that's number 10. And not only does he win the fight, which would have been, as Teddy said, he's plus whatever, minus 2,000 is Munguia, but he knocks him out. And he wasn't a puncher. He only had a few knockouts on his record, so he was more of a counterpuncher, a boxer, and he pulls off that, not only the huge win, but by knockout. Number 9, another recent one. I think it belongs. Andy Ruiz against Joshua, the first one, Madison Square Garden, New York. I don't know, did Joshua overlook him? Ruiz was a last-minute replacement. It has to be a great upset. It is a great upset, not only because of the line that was so big that you would have got rich if you would have bet on Andy Ruiz, but because, and Andy Ruiz did get rich. He got paid, and then he got paid for the rematch, and he got Snickers, too. On top of it, he got a Snicker. Yeah, he did, Rich. He got a Snicker contract. That's what happens when when you don't have a Jenny Craig body, so to speak. But it was a great upset. I think part of it, Joshua was not in England. He was traveling. He was on the road. He was in Madison Square Garden. He might have took his eye off the ball, definitely. But you can't take away from Ruiz. Ruiz came off the floor to pull off that win. A huge win.
25 to 1.
Huge. Number 8, Max Schmeling versus Joe Louis. The first one, when Louis was undefeated, coming up, getting ready to be heavyweight champ. He was a huge favorite. Like I said, he was a young Joe Louis, hadn't won the title yet. Everybody thought he was going to go through Schmeling. Schmeling famously said before the fight, he was a huge dog. Boxing was the biggest sport in the country at that time. So all the journalists were out there. You had writers. You don't have newspaper writers no more. You got internet guys. I'm not saying they're bad. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. I will say, but a lot of them are good. But you don't have really writers from newspapers following the game anymore the way they did back then. So you had the writers coming up to Max Schmeling. How do you think you have any chance against the undefeated Brown Bomber, Joe Louis? And he says, I see, he was German. So his English was a little broken. He said, I see something. I see something. What he saw was an opportunity to time a right hand over the jab of Lewis, when Lewis sometimes would throw his jab and lay on the right side. You should never lay on the right side, even if you're the great Joe Louis. He corrected it. You have to get in close where you take away the room for the right hand, the length of the right hand. Or you have to slip to your left, outside the right hand. You can't lay your head on the right. As a matter of fact, the great, and I will say great because you're great, Richie, and of course, Bennett is great too. The great Bennett Garcia, our editor, maybe he'll get something up there and show how Schmeling pulled off that upset by showing you what he saw in the pre-fight hype and the pre-fight press conference where he said, I see something. He saw, as I just said, Lewis would jab, leave it out there a little bit, lay on his right, and leave a window of opportunity for a right hand and give room for that right hand. That was number 8. Of course, the great Joe Louis. My number 1 heavyweight, by the way, Ali is too. He revenged that later on. Matter of fact, he won the title against Braddock. And when he won the title, his trainer called him champ. Hey, champ. He said, don't call me champ. Not until I beat Schmeling. That's how proud he was. That's the mindset of a champion. And a champion was going to be a champ a long time. And Joe Louis was a champion a long time. A long time. Number 7, Michael Spinks against Larry Holmes, the first fight. Larry Holmes was looking to break the record of the great Rocky Marciano, the only heavyweight champ to retire undefeated, 49-0. And Holmes got to 48-0. And he couldn't quite get over the hump. Some people thought that it was a bad decision. I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. Michael Spinks did a hell of a job that night. He moved up from light heavyweight. He put the weight on appropriately, and he fought for the heavyweight title, and he pulled off the big upset. And part of that upset was what I just mentioned, that he kept the great Larry Holmes. And Larry Holmes is one of the great heavyweights of all time. Some people think the greatest jab of all time. He kept the great Larry Holmes from breaking the great Rocky Marciano's record. So, huge upset. Number 6, huge upset. Leon Spinks versus Ali. Ali was getting old, no doubt. But Spinks only had about 9 fights. I don't remember his exact record, but he had somewhere around 9 fights, 8, 9 fights at the most. And he was a gold medalist. I think it was even less than that. And he was a gold medalist. You might be right, buddy. And he was a gold medalist from the Olympics, the greatest Olympic team of all time for me, 1975 team. Was it 76 team, right? 76?
It was 1984, right? Am I
No,
right?
That's not the greatest team. That's not the greatest team. That's a team. They won the most gold medals, but there was no Russians and no Cubans in that Olympics. So that is not the greatest Olympic team. The greatest American, that was a great one, but the greatest American Olympic team, I think the greatest Olympic team of all time was the 76 team with Sugar Ray Leonard, the Spinks brothers, Howard Davis, and Leo Randolph. They all won gold medals. And they all went on to win world titles, except Howard Davis, who might have gotten a bad decision in one of the world titles fights that he had. He might have got a bad decision. But that was a hell of a team. And Michael Spinks was part of that team. He was part of that team, and so was Leon Spinks, his brother, the Marine. Wow. He came forward. He was throwing punches, and that's what he did with Ali in that fight. And again, an old Ali. Ali won the rematch. Unfortunately, that was the beginning of the end for Leon. Doing the greatest thing you could do in the world. Winning a heavyweight champion was part of his demise. Because when he made money, he came from a poor place in the projects of St. Louis. He fought his way out of there. He was a Marine. He represented this country. He was great. He was great. I get mad when people make fun of him because of this and that. He was great. And he was a great fighter and a great American. And some people can handle success. They're ready for it. Some aren't. Some people get help when they make that success. Some don't. He didn't get help. And unfortunately, in the end, he went down. He spiraled downwards. But he had that night, and he was great that night. Number 5, Sandy Sadler versus Willie Pep, the first fight. They fought many times. Sandy Sadler, Willie Pep, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Sandy Sadler, too, greatest featherweights of all time. You see his picture probably up behind me of Willie Pep. In that first fight, it was only Pep's second loss in 137 fights. That's pretty good. That makes for a big upset. And Sandy Sadler was a monster. He was a freak. He was big. He was strong. He was long. He could punch like hell. I mean, he was great. He was the nemesis for Willie Pep. But he was just too big and strong for him. But Willie Pep was one of the greatest boxers of all time. The will-o'-the-wisp. Legend has it that he actually won a round without throwing a punch. Just ring generalship, making a guy miss. Keeping the guy at bay, not letting him throw a punch. He won a round without throwing a punch. I mean, how great is that? He beat Sadler. He wound up beating Sadler. I forget which fight it was, but that was a hell of a win for him to beat Sadler. But Sadler beat him, I think, 3 out of 4 fights. I think it was 3 out of 4. Just too big and strong. But that first fight with Pep, where people didn't know how good Sadler was, and Pep had only 1 loss in 137 fights, nobody expected Pep to get beat. Number 4, big upset against the greatest fighter of all time, in many people's estimations. Randy Turpin beats Sugar Ray Robinson. I love these stats, bud. Only the second loss for Robinson in 125 fights. Can you imagine?
Incredible.
Can you imagine? Randy Turpin doesn't get enough love from the UK, from all my brothers and sisters over there in the UK. I love you guys. Love you guys, all right? Get those crumpets cooking, will you? I'm going to come visit you. Yeah, I'm going to come one day. I'm going to have a Guinness with you, going to have a few crumpets with you. Yeah, I'd like to do that. Bring my family with me. I would love to do that. I've been over there a bunch of times. I had the privilege, of course, of watching a heavyweight title fight from ringside with my daughter at Wembley Stadium. How great was that? It was a great fight, too. It was Dubois against Joshua. So I loved you guys over there. Randy Turpin, never forget him, you great British fans. You're the greatest fans in the world. We have a lot of great fans, but nobody's got the history in the sport like you guys do. Always give love to Randy Turpin. He pulled off a hell of an upset against Sugar Ray Robinson. Of course, he made the mistake of fighting him a second time. And, he fought him tough, but nobody beat Sugar Ray Robinson in a rematch. Number 3, Ali against Sonny Liston. The first fight. Ali was a lot of bravado, a lot of talk, a lot of flash. Gold medalist from the Olympics, undefeated. We never saw anybody with his speed, with his legs. He had the speed of a lightweight. The only difference was he was a heavyweight. Nobody ever saw anybody like that. But he was fighting the bear. The bear. He named him the bear. Sonny Liston, the bear. And Sonny Liston had demolished Floyd Patterson twice in the first round. And he was a great fighter, Liston. Yeah, he was a great puncher. Yeah, he was menacing. Yeah, he was scary. He was all of that, but he could fight. We don't know if there was shenanigans or not. There was a lot of talk about that because Liston was, around some unsavory, I'll put it that way, some unsavory figures in the management of him. So there was a lot of talk and rumors about if the fight was fixed, this and that. But that first fight with Liston was the big favorite. Everybody thought he was going to shut Ali's mouth, and he didn't. And what happened? He stayed on his stool. I think it was the 8th round, whatever it was. And Ali started to become Ali. He started to become Ali. He won his title for the first time, and a legend was started. Number 2, James Braddock versus Max Baer. You know when they make a movie about you, it's got to be pretty special what you did. The Cinderella Man himself, James Braddock, he was on home relief, welfare, whatever you want to call it. He was getting help from the government. He was broke. He couldn't work. He was out of work. He wanted to work, but he couldn't get work. He had bad hands. He was a fighter. His hands were giving him trouble in the fights. He already had losses, but he got this opportunity. He strung some wins together. He got this opportunity to fight Max Baer, the heavyweight champion. Max Baer had killed a guy in the ring. I don't know if he, that's the way they reported it. He hit the guy, unfortunately, it was a fatality in the ring. We don't know if it was a previous undisclosed injury. A lot of times in these kind of cases, that is the case. Whatever. The guy did not survive the right hand of Max Baer. So the legend was there too, that Baer, kills guys with his right hand. He was a big right hand puncher. He was a big man. He was also, a bit of a guy that he was a promoter's dream. He went out. He was a ladies' man a little bit. He was a little bit of a guy who burned it at both ends of the candle, I guess you could say it, about Max Baer a little bit. But one thing you couldn't deny, he could punch like heck with that right hand. And he was fighting a guy who had bad hands, who had been on home relief, who had to get help from the U.S. government to take care of his family. The commission didn't even want to commission this fight. They didn't want to approve this fight. They thought Braddock's life was in danger. They did. But it got approved, and what did Braddock do? He outboxed Max Baer. He took that big right hand away, and he boxed a great fight, and he became the Cinderella Man. Number 1. There can only be number 1. Can only be. When you are, when you're Godzilla and you get beat, well, that's an upset. That's an upset. And Tyson was Godzilla. And when Buster Douglas beat him, what was it, bud? 35-1 at the beginning? I think at the beginning was...
No, I think it was like 50-1, 49-1.
Yeah, whatever it was, man, when Tyson got beat, not only beat, but got knocked out by Buster Douglas in Japan.
Man, over my left shoulder right here.
There he is. There he is. Right there. Buster Douglas. Wow. Buster Douglas always had talent. He was big. He could punch. He had hand speed. He could box. He knew how to fight. His father was a fighter. He always had the tools, but he always came up short against Tony Tucker, in his big fights. He came up short, and people said, which is wrong to say about any fighter, but they said the one thing you never want to hear about a fighter, they said he didn't have heart. And when he fought Tyson, something happened. I always say that the timing is important. Timing in life. I always say that sometimes things can be in the air. Sometimes things can be magical. Things can be almost spiritual. Sometimes there's something called fate, destiny. I believe in that. And I believe it was his destiny, his fate, Buster Douglas, that night, to pull off the biggest upset in the history of the great sport of boxing, sport that's been around longer than any other sport. Something had happened, something terrible had happened. And his mother had died just a couple months before this fight. And he wanted to be a champion for his mom. And I think the difference in this Buster Douglas from the ones that came up short, that always had the talent, always had the ability, but didn't have the it factor. Whether you want to call it the heart, the desire, the determination, the mental toughness, whatever you want to call it. He was missing that. This night he wasn't missing that. He had all the talent he always had with that part, the mental part, the desire, the mental toughness. And the reason I think it was nothing could hurt him more than his mother's dying. Mike Tyson couldn't hurt him, not after he lost his mother. And he was fighting for his mother, for the memory of his mother, the thought of his mother. And that made Buster Douglas everything that people had hoped he would be early in his career when he wasn't. He just wasn't. No trainer in the world could quite make him be that. But on this night, he was that. Man, he boxed beautifully, he controlled range, he stepped out, he set traps, he walked Tyson into the uppercut, and he even got off the floor. He got hit with that one shot, the shot that knocked out so many guys, the uppercut from Tyson. He got hit with that, but he got up. He got up, and when he got up, Tyson went down. That was the air going out of the balloon of Tyson right there, when he got up. And then he just dismantled Tyson. He hit him with the jab. He controlled the distance, being bigger, being longer. And he set up that uppercut, and he caught Tyson reaching in with that uppercut, put him down. Nobody can forget that picture of Tyson crawling around on the floor, looking for his mouthpiece, putting his mouthpiece back in his mouth, trying to get up. I mean, that's a picture that will be left in people's minds that are boxing fans probably forever. Buster Douglas, what a great night that was for Buster Douglas. And for the sport, and I'll tell you why. Because anytime you get an upset, especially over a guy who people really thought was unbeatable, when you get an upset like that, it's healthy for the sport. Because people don't want to go to a movie already knowing how the movie ends. Well, people don't want to go to a fight sometimes already knowing, well, this guy can't lose. I mean, what's the sense of going? But this showed that anybody could lose on any given night if the other guy wanted it enough, was prepared enough. And Buster Douglas was. That's it. That's my 10 greatest upsets. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you enjoy not only the fights, who they are, and what number they're at. You could adjust the numbers. I don't care. Do whatever you want. But the setup of what went behind those fights. Not just the left or the right uppercut that landed, but the setup of what was going on, the atmosphere of the fight. What made that fight such an upset? What made it such a moment to get onto my list? Because it's got to be a good moment to get onto my list. And you know why? Because my list goes out to you guys. And I don't want it going out to you guys complaining and picking me apart if I don't feel good about the list. I want to put out the right stuff for you guys because you guys are the best. Even when sometimes you get a little, you get a little. But on the whole, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you looking at our list. I appreciate you guys going on our social media. I appreciate my son making this possible for you guys to even be able, because without him, I'm not doing this. And I appreciate you guys watching our live streaming and watching our podcast.
Yeah. Awesome list. I really enjoyed it. I think that is number one for everybody. That's got to be the consensus number one. That's one of those moments where, at least for me, I think everybody, you know exactly where you were that night of Mike Tyson and Buster Douglas. And I'll finish up with saying this. Besides, I love the list because it's a mix of old, new, and even in between, if you want to call it that, for Tyson and Douglas. But it was the perfect storm of kind of what you were saying with the background of other fights for an upset, right? You touched on the number one motivator, his mother passing for Buster Douglas. Number two, they fought in Japan, the travel. And number three, not only did the fighter maybe look past and take lightly Buster Douglas, but the entire camp did. And I'll never forget, as you talked about that, you know, the memories and the visual of Tyson searching for the mouthpiece. The visual I will never forget is of Aaron Snow, the trainer, being underprepared. Not prepared at all, and didn't have the end swell to reduce the swelling, and instead trying to fill a plastic glove with some water to reduce the swelling. It was the perfect storm. It was the perfect upset. I think it was the perfect list. I hope the fans, the viewers really enjoyed it. As always, thank you for joining. Please like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what's your top 10 greatest upsets of all time.